Good morning. My name is Melissa DiGenova, and I am the Conservative Party of BC candidate for Vancouver Yaletown. As a mother to a young daughter, as a woman, and as a wife of a police officer, I don't feel safe very often walking around in this community, and that includes Gastown, Yaletown, and downtown. Where we are here today is the site of a brutal and violent attack where a man had his hands severed from his body just a few short weeks ago. Right before that incident happened, the same person who chopped off this man's hand killed someone just a few blocks away at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre. We need change for this community. I hear from many people that they don't feel safe walking down the street. The BC NDP has purchased hotels and turned them into SROs in our community, and we know the calls for service have gone up tenfold in areas directly surrounding these hotels that have been converted to SROs. I'm proud to be running with the Conservative Party of BC that has a plan for real change and for public safety for people in the community like me and my family. And now I'm pleased to introduce you to our next Premier of British Columbia, who will tell you more about our public safety plan and platform. Here's John Rustad.
Melissa, wait. Melissa, should come here. Just stand, please. Thanks. Good morning, everybody, and thank you all for coming out this morning. When we think about crime, when we think about what's happening in our streets, really, so many people today across this province say that safety is the number one issue, that they don't feel safe, just as Melissa has described, that we have a province that is being overrun by crime. The worst part is, David Eby will say, crime stats are down. The big part of that is crime is not being reported. Issues are not being taken forward. We have serious issues that are happening right across this province. And I just want to start actually by highlighting a couple things that David Eby wrote, which is the arrest handbook in terms of a guide to your rights should you be arrested, in his work with Pivot Legal and how he fought for criminals. Second one is how to sue the police, another book from David Eby that he wrote. And it's no wonder when you see the fact that, thank you. It's no wonder when you see the fact that our Premier actually wrote these books. It's no wonder when you think about the fact that we don't have the resources and support that's needed for police across this province. Just over a year ago, there was an event where there was people on stage, they were playing music and celebrating, lots of people in the crowd, including lots of NDP MLAs and cabinet ministers, and on the stage they were chanting, "We hate the police kill our kids." And the NDP refused to actually even say that this was wrong. I raised this in the legislature, and the Solicitor General actually stood up and said, well, we weren't on stage. In other words, condoning this type of action and these type of thoughts. There's a lot that needs to be done in this province to make sure that our society is secure, to make sure that our society can be peaceful. And I want to talk today about what the Conservatives are going to do in British Columbia to address crime and address safety, because quite frankly, people around this province have been telling me enough is enough. It's time to put the rights of citizens before the rights of criminals in British Columbia. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to end the catch and release policy by David Eby and this government, having these criminals going over and over again back out in society. How many times have we heard a criminal case or an issue of violent attack where somebody has been arrested 50 or 60 times? How many times is it that police have said they're well known to the police in when these crimes are being committed, and yet once again they're back out again and again in our society? I reference the Dunn family in Surrey, and I've talked about this many times. I met with Mr. Dunn, and he lost his daughter to a prolific offender with violent history, with weapons history, and his daughter was killed because this individual was let again back out on the street. So we need to crack down on things like bail reform. We need to make sure that we toughen the charge assessment guidelines. Under the NDP, no charge assessments have increased by 75%. It's time to bring this to an end. We need to make sure that we fight for guaranteed minimum sentencing in this province. This is a federal issue. We need to take on the federal government to bring this forward. For these prolific offenders, there needs to be added consequences for these crimes. We also need to hire more sheriffs and judges. There's no question that it's difficult to get through the process within our court system. They're locked up. There's reform that's needed within our court system as well to help streamline this and make these things happen. And as part of this, we are going to be creating a new statutory court to deal with minor offenses, get them out of the system, making sure that we can get these things through faster, with a goal to have these cases being able to address within a week or two tops. This is to get these people the consequences that are needed for the criminal actions that are to be done. In addition to that, I'm hearing from parents across the province that they are concerned when justice is being served in courts, that justice is not being seen. And so we'll make sure that court proceedings are recorded and all court proceedings are available online so that people have the ability to be able to hear what is going on and see exactly how our courts are operating. Safe streets are an important piece of everything we need to do in British Columbia. When you look at what's been going on, I've talked about this already on a number of things, and we have to defend our police. We actually have to be able to provide the support for our police and make sure that we have their back. They've got a tough job. Every day they go out and have to deal with things that nobody wants to know or even see about. These people are important to have within our society, important in the work that they do. And so, for example, candidates like Christine Boyle running for the NDP, who actually voted to defund the police. I just find that offensive, but it makes sense given David Eby and David Eby's record in where things are in this province. So we need to hire more frontline officers. We need to make sure that they have the support they needed. Too many cases around this province where cities and the caseloads are way, way too high for police officers to be able to manage this. We need to end decriminalization. And I've heard from police time and again, where you have decriminalization, you can have cars coming and going from a known dealer or a suspected dealer. The police can no longer stop a car and seize the drugs and use it as evidence. We've actually taken tools away from the police to be able to go after drug addicts and other components. We have to expand the capacity in this province for training of our officers. Far too many times I've seen, whether it is Vancouver Police or others, forces around the province, talking about the fact that recruitment is a challenge. We need to be able to do more training. We have to enforce mandatory mental health treatment for those who pose a danger to themselves and others. Talked about this before. Where we have these issues in our society, we need to make sure that we can step up to the plate and have these people treated for the issues that they have. We also have talked just this last weekend when I was up in Kelowna, we talked about removing tent cities in British Columbia. It's an important piece to make sure that our streets are safe. We've got to make sure, of course, as well, that we have housing, but we're going to have a zero tolerance in support of housing for any criminal activity and nuisance behavior. We want to make sure that they're good neighbors within communities. Part of what we see as well, for far too often across British Columbia, is the drugs that have been proliferated across our province. We need to be able to crack down, quite frankly, on organized crime and the sources of where these drugs are coming from. So we're going to do everything we can to crack down on these criminals, make sure that we crack down on anybody who imports and distributes the drugs like fentanyl. We want to work with the federal government to improve our borders. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on our borders in British Columbia to make sure that we're catching this. And a big piece of this is securing our ports. We've suggested this in terms of making sure that we have the police that are needed, dedicated to being able to police our ports. And David Eby's comments was, that's federal. We shouldn't be worried about that. And I'm sorry. This is a source of organized crime, of drugs that are coming into our communities, of guns that are coming into our communities. These need to be dealt with. We need to make sure that we expand the RCMP-led Waterfront Joint Forces operations and expand the number of officers that are part of that. It's only the right thing to do for British Columbia to make sure we can keep people safe. We also need to fight for the fair share of resources from the federal government to combat things like organized crime and networks. It's an important piece to make sure we don't let the federal government off the hook for the safety that's needed in British Columbia. And by getting the deadly fentanyl off our street, we need to crack down on the fentanyl as well as the materials that are used in terms of making these drugs, making sure that we go after them right at the source. The cycle of crime that we've seen in British Columbia is a serious problem. Rehabilitation and enforcement go hand in hand. A life diverted from crime and addiction is, quite frankly, a life saved. So we're going to expand access to addiction and mental health supports for individuals in the justice and correction system. We need to make sure we're doing everything we can for those individuals to get through the crisis, the things that have led them into this. We're going to enact world-leading rehabilitation practices to encourage an exit from gang life, trying to make sure that we save our youth from being pulled in, and giving them a way to be able to get out of gangs. We want to support community policing, which is foundation to the trust building of local government, or local law enforcement, I should say. And we're also going to make sure that we create a provincial school liaison officer. This is a program that's most important, make sure that people within our education system have those tools and have police that are accessible, that are in there, and they understand exactly what needs to be done when it comes to crime. There's no question in my mind when you think about what has happened in British Columbia, you can lay this at the feet of David Eby. He's been an activist for decades. This is what he did before he came into politics, and he's carried that same attitude forward in terms of how he's addressing crime in BC. We need to make sure we put the rights of citizens and of victims first. And that is what a Conservative government will make sure we deliver on for all people in British Columbia, so that we can have safer streets and everybody once again can be able to feel much safer in their communities and in their homes. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. This is just a reminder, if you're calling in, to press *1 if you wanted to be added to the queue. We're going to start off with Richard Zussman.